Okay, I am so excited that we have Dr. Stuart Ablon here, an award-winning Harvard psychologist on the Check Your Head podcast. Welcome to the podcast, Dr. Ablon.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here. I appreciate you having me.
Well, we just heard Lzzy Hale's interview, and she's had issues with her mental health. She's had issues with addiction, particularly alcoholism. And a lot of people are resistant to change. I know that you've done a lot of research on change, and you're known for the taglines, people do well if they can, and behavior is about skill, not will. Can you start just by further explaining this?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, it's interesting. That phrase, even resistant to change, right? Which is a phrase that we're all familiar with. It seems to imply that somebody's sort of quite capable of changing, but just doesn't really feel like it. And that's really at odds with what we've learned over the past almost half a century now about change and our human brain and behavior and our mental health. And it used to be the case that we just thought if people tried hard enough, they could behave in whatever ways and feel whatever ways we wanted them to feel. But it's just not that simple. And what my research and a lot of other people's research has shown is that as humans, as people, our behavior is driven much more by our skills than our motivation. And when I say skills, I mean skills in areas like problem solving and flexibility and frustration tolerance and what are called emotion regulation skills, which is just a fancy way of saying like our ability to manage our emotional responses to things. And those are skills. And they're skills that we're actually not often necessarily taught. We just sort of hope people get them naturally. And when they don't, we struggle in the world. And my work is about helping people understand that, most of us are trying the best we can to manage what the world is throwing at us with the skills we have. It's not about motivation. It's about skill. And that the notion of people do well if they can, what that means is we're all doing the best we can. Not people do well if they want to, but people do well if they can. If we could, we would. And if we're not, it's probably a little bit more complicated than meets the eye in terms of what's getting in our way.
Well, it kind of reminds me of being back in school. And I remember you talking about the child that may not be doing that well in school, how that person might be working maybe 3 times as hard as the person that's getting an A. And I found that to be true for myself. I mean, there were classes like math and usually things with numbers that really I had a hard time with. And I was working so hard to do well. And it was so hard. But the classes that I excelled in, when I was doing well, I seemed to breeze through it a lot better. So is it about compassion? I know you talk about empathy as well when we talk about problem solving. Can you talk about how we start with the best way to problem solve with somebody?
Yeah. Well, first, let's talk a little bit more about what you just said, because it's really important. I think, each of us has our own sets of strengths and weaknesses, right? And, so I may have a sport that I'm, particularly good at, but I may have very limited musical talent, for instance. And this may not be just hypothetical that I'm saying. Just incentivizing or motivating somebody to try to be better at something, if they struggle with the skills to do it, is not going to help that much. And, you mentioned kids. This has been true for a long time when you think about academics and, kids who we now know have learning disabilities. we had no idea in the past that kids had these learning disabilities. We just thought that they weren't trying hard enough to read or do math or write or things like that. And as you said, the irony there is the people who struggle with these skills are often the ones trying the hardest. People who have these skills in abundance, they come easily to them. They don't have to try that hard. So, this is a big mindset shift for us to realize that when somebody's struggling, it's probably more about skill than will, and they're trying really hard. And what we don't want to do is send them the message that we don't think they're trying hard enough. And so that's where empathy begins. And it's empathy for others, it's empathy for ourselves. It's really understanding that people do well if they can. And if somebody's struggling, it's not that they're weak. It's not that they're not trying hard enough. It's not that they're not properly motivated. It's not that they don't care enough. It's probably that they're having a hard time bringing the skills that they would need to a situation to handle it well.
Okay, so I mean, how do we get to the core of what's really going on with somebody if, let's say, a past trauma is preventing them from maybe even being aware of what's going on? I mean, I think self-awareness is really important, right? To kind of really maybe as a foundation of starting to deal with a problem is just being self-aware that something is going on with our behavior and our thoughts that is just kind of ruining our lives or maybe just causing a lot of problems and drama.
Yes. Well, and here's the thing. If you feel blamed, it's a whole lot harder to have that kind of self-awareness. If your behavior is causing difficulty, but you feel like you're being misunderstood or blamed for that, you're much less likely to be able to reflect upon, well, what are my contributions to this? What am I struggling with? What could I do to help? So when you embrace this notion of people do well if they can, we're all doing the best we can out in the world to handle what the world is throwing at us. It provides us with the empathy that's needed to say, okay, well, you know what? The other thing about all of us is we're all working on something. Everybody's got their challenges. And what are mine in particular? And what we're able to do, we follow a bunch of research in the neurosciences that helps us identify the types of skills that we need to be able to manage our behavior in the world. And we can help people do a self-assessment of those. I mean, we can ask you 20 odd questions and you can just sort of reflect upon, is this something that's easy for me or hard for me? And we can sort of spit out a little graph that will say to you, okay, here's where your strengths are. And here's where some of the challenges are. And again, nobody gets a clean bill of health across these categories. We all have our strengths and weaknesses. So, like I might have excellent communication skills and be able to regulate my emotions. But maybe I'm not the most flexible thinker in the world. And maybe that's where some of my challenges come in, for example. So I think, self-awareness comes if you begin from a place that isn't about judgment. It's a compassionate view. And that opens the door to people being better able to look at their own strengths and weaknesses with an eye towards, well, what might I want to work on as well?
Well, I went onto your website. It's stuartablon.com.
Yes.
And I took the test.
Okay. Well, there you go.
Because I want to know, I guess I'm one of those people that want to know what's going on with myself so that I can further improve as a person. I'm really interested also in communication and language. So if somebody gets to a point where they're like, okay, I would like to be more self-aware, they can go on your website and take that test.
Mm-hmm. How did you find it? What was the experience like for, you don't have to reveal your, what came out in terms of your strengths and challenges, but just how did you feel about the process and what was that like for you?
Well, I thought it was really easy, first of all, because, it's just a series of questions and it's anonymous. So, you feel like it's just information for yourself.
Yes.
And I think, it just gave me something very black and white to tell me what are my strengths and what are areas that I should maybe focus on to try to improve. Mm-hmm. So I really appreciated that.
Good. I'm glad to hear that.
Okay. One thing I saw is that you have experience working with people and kids that have explosive behavior and also challenges in behavior.
Hmm.
Oftentimes as adults, we could react as kids, right? Especially, let's say we're talking about addiction and we're denying that we have a problem and we start saying things or doing things just to deflect and not deal with that. I
Hmm.
mean, what do we do in those situations? Let's say if somebody is in denial of a problem they might have that's really starting to wreck their life.
Yeah. Well, I guess the way I like to think about that, whatever form of challenging or destructive behavior it is, including addiction, is to think about those things sort of not as the problem itself, but as the sort of symptoms or the flag that there is a problem. In other words, I say to myself, this is the person's best solution to problems in their life that they're having a hard time handling in a more adaptive or better way. So what I do is I try to, through a non-judgmental lens, I just try to get curious about what do you think is going well in your life? Where are some of the challenges? What are the tough things for you? And really try to trace back, for instance, when it comes to addiction, when does somebody find themselves using? Under what circumstances? When what's going on in their life? And those are the problems to solve. And it just so happens that this person's solution to those problems may be using, where another person's solutions to the problem may be to withdraw or to explode or to you name it. So I'm focused much less on the solution I don't like and instead on what are the concerns? What are the issues? What are the things they're struggling with? And that'll open the door to whether there are other potential solutions to the problem as well.
Okay, so being curious about yourself is a good start to being self-aware.
Hmm.
But coming from the other side, let's say you're the partner of somebody who is in addiction and you want to start talking about that topic. What's a good way to approach that? Because I hear that a lot. People, they see other people struggling, they see them, whether it's addiction or mental health. How do you approach that situation and
Yeah.
and start that discussion?
Yeah. Well, I think the tough thing about these kinds of discussions is they're so emotional and they're so fraught that we often try to sort of nuance the discussion or massage it so that we're sort of like, beating around the bush a little bit so that we don't sort of set someone off or have them get defensive. And what ends up happening is it ends up a discussion that sort of really loses its focus and its original intent. And so I encourage people to be very direct,
Hmm.
but to just wrap that directness in empathy and curiosity. So it can look as simple as, hey, you know what? I'm really concerned about how much you're drinking lately. And I'm not blaming you. I know you're doing the best you can. I'm just worried and I want to talk to you about it. And I want to understand what's going on for you. So I go right into a mode of empathy, which means trying to understand. I mean, this is the thing about the word empathy means to understand. So you go right into the mode of, I want to understand. You bring up your concern and go right into that. And just make sure that you're constantly reassuring the person that you're worried, you're concerned, they're doing the best they can, and you're there to help. But try to be as direct as possible aside from that.
Well, I've had musicians share their story and the times that people have pulled them aside and have spoken to them directly about their mental health or their addiction. Um, you know, Oftentimes when people get to the other side and get better, they say, that conversation really saved my life.
Yeah.
And I think when it's done with empathy and care, people instinctually know that it's because you love them, and it's because it's for them, not for me.
Right.
But I was wondering if we can kind of do a little role play, because I would like to see you in action. Because when you started doing that, you started doing a little bit of role play, and I thought, gosh, wouldn't it be cool if we just continued with that?
Yeah, sure. One of the things I guess I want to emphasize here is, what you're describing here is what some people would call an intervention of sorts.
Hmm.
And the word intervention, it seems, like it's something you do to someone and
Hmm.
it's sort of forceful. And you can intervene to try to help someone in a way that isn't about imposing. It's about, again, trying to understand and trying to collaborate. And I think that's what we're trying to model here. And I'd be happy to role play. So however you want to do it, I'm up for it.
Okay, so let's have the scenario that the night before I drank too much. I was at a show with friends, and I ended up embarrassing myself. Maybe I was stumbling around. Maybe I said things that were inappropriate. I came home, and there was an explosion with my partner, and my partner, I said terrible things to them. I called them names. And then the next morning, I forgot everything that happened.
So that's what I was going to say is the hardest piece of this is that person may not remember at all what happened, which makes it, of course, a lot easier to deny or not acknowledge what actually occurred. Right.
Okay, but let's say that this has been an ongoing situation,
Yes.
and they know it's an issue, but they don't feel like it's a very important issue, because it's really the other people that have to deal with their behavior. I mean, if
Yes.
somebody blacks out, or if somebody forgets, and other people are picking up the pieces, then they're
Yes.
not really having to deal with it maybe as much as the other person.
Right. Right.
So, what would you say the next morning?
So you want me to, in essence, be the partner? Yes.
Right, right, right. Be the
Okay.
partner. And I'm the
Yeah.
person that
Yeah.
has an issue.
Okay. And just before we hop into the role play, let me set the stage by saying, what you've described is I have all kinds of concerns,
Hmm.
and this is impacting me very negatively.
Hmm.
If I lead with my concerns in this discussion, all I will do is what in clinical jargon we call dysregulate you. You will get flooded by emotion, and the smart part of your brain, the prefrontal cortex, will be nowhere to be found, and it'll devolve into an argument pretty quickly, or you'll shut down, or you'll leave, or something like that. So I am going to bring up my concerns, but I'm not going to start with them.
Hmm.
Instead, I'm going to start with empathy and trying to understand what went on. So I'm going to bring up the problem and go with empathy. Okay, here we go. I would say, hey, listen, I feel like we need to talk about last night. And don't worry, this is not going to be a lecture or something like that. I do have my concerns, but I'm just wondering what your perspective is about last night, whether you sort of have any concerns or feel badly about anything, or how you feel about what went down last night.
Well, first of all, I feel like you were just preventing me from having fun. I was just trying to have fun, socializing with everyone. And then all of a sudden, I just remember being taken home. I don't know exactly why you did
Got it.
that.
So you were just trying to have a good time, just trying
Yeah,
to have fun, right?
exactly. Yeah, yeah.
And then it sounds like it sort of feels like the evening ended really abruptly. It sounds like you might have even been upset because you were like, wait, why is this ending? I'm just trying to have fun here, right?
Exactly, exactly.
Okay.
And we got home, and you know, I I remember just going to sleep.
Hmm.
But I remember you being upset and angry, and I was just tired.
Hmm. Okay.
So what's the problem? I mean,
So what you're saying is you sort of don't see a problem here because you were just trying to have fun, and then you were tired and wanted to go to sleep, and I'm pissed off at you, and you're just like, what's the big deal? I'm just trying to have fun. What's the issue here? Am I hearing
right,
you right?
right, right.
Okay, got it. All right. Well, that makes sense. And if I'm in your shoes and I'm thinking, hey, I just want to have fun and I'm having fun, and then things are getting shut down on me, people are upset with me. I don't, that doesn't feel too good to you, right? Sounds like, yeah.
Right, right.
Okay, I hear you. So you're just trying to have fun, and feels like maybe sounds like maybe it feels like I was even a wet blanket, and then I'm upset with you, and you're tired and just want to go to bed. So that all stinks.
Well, that's kind of how I feel like you are when I decide to drink. I mean, it always seems like you're restricting me and limiting me, and
Got it.
I'm just trying to relax.
Oh, okay. Wait a sec. So that sort of sounds important. So you feel like I'm restricting you. So you feel like I'm sort of like a parent or something, and like telling you what to do or not to do. And you're an adult. But you also said it's not just that you're trying to have fun. This is also how you try to relax and blow off some steam. Yes?
Right, exactly.
Okay. All right. Well, this is helpful just for me to understand where you're coming from. That to understand it's having fun and relaxing, and the last thing you want to do is feel controlled, and that you have to leave or something like that. Or yeah, got it. Okay, now let me pause our role play for a minute.
Okay.
Notice we talked for several minutes, and I didn't say a blessed thing about what I'm worried about yet. All I did was try to understand your perspective, your point of view, your concern. Okay. That's the first step, understanding where you're coming from. Only once I understand where you're coming from do I move to the second step, which is where now I'm going to raise my concerns, not my solutions to the problem, but my concerns. Okay. And that's going to go like this. I'm going to say, so I guess, listen, you could tell I was upset with you last night. And obviously I'm bringing this up now. So, I had things I wanted to talk about. Um, I hear you that you want to have fun, you want to relax, you don't want to be controlled. And I guess what I'm worried about is when you drink too much, and I don't think you're aware of this because once you've drunk too much, you're not exactly as with it as you are when you're not drinking. It can be embarrassing. It can be hard to manage. It can at times feel unsafe, and it's not so fun for me to feel like I have to take care of you because I'm worried about you because you've drank and you had enough to drink that you're behaving in ways that don't seem too responsible for me. And let me be clear, I understand what you're saying, which is you just want to have fun and you just want to relax and you don't want to be told what to do. Now, let me break our role play for a sec. The reason
Okay.
I went right back into that is I was feeling like, okay, I might have gone a little heavy with my concerns. You're going to start to shut down. So I just went back and reminded you, I heard you, and I want you to just hear me now. Okay.
Mhm.
Now, once the reason I'm doing this with my hands, by the way, is this is how I remind myself I've heard you, I've heard me. Now I can move on to the last ingredient, which is where I'm going to ask you to work together with me here. And I'm going to say something like, so look, I guess I just wonder if there's things that we can do so that you can relax, so you can have fun. And so I can too, without worrying about you and taking care of you and your behavior at the same time. And I think if we could figure out some way to do that, you wouldn't feel controlled either by me. So do you have any ideas of what that could look like?
I don't. I don't have any ideas. Do you have an idea?
And I got to think about it. And by the way, pausing role play again. I don't want to be imposing a solution upon you here. So I want to give you first crack at it. And if you say I don't very quickly, I'm going to pause a little bit and I'll probably say something like, I'd have to think about it a little bit, but maybe we can both think about it because it's not an easy thing. Um, but I feel like if we don't figure out healthier ways to relax and have fun that don't have me feeling like I'm worried about you and need to babysit you, we're going to be in trouble. So we got to come up with something.
Well, I think it's important to note that during discussions like these, we may not have the answers, especially when you're, you know, approaching somebody and saying, do you have any ideas when that person has not even thought about this being an issue?
That's right.
But I like the approach where you're putting it in their hands, kind of giving them the control first. so that they know that you, I guess, like you're talking about making it mutually collaborative,
Yes.
making it
Yes.
a collaborative type of problem solving.
Yes.
Now there's,
Now,
go ahead.
sorry, I do want to be clear about something here, which is, hopefully we would then come up with some ideas for ways to have fun and relax that didn't involve too much drinking. And as a result, behavior that was dangerous, reckless, embarrassing, etc. If we didn't, or if we struggled to, or maybe the sort of executing on those solutions was harder and you kept drinking excessively, the next thing I can do in a follow up conversation is bring up that I'm also worried that you're not able to control your drinking because addiction is an illness. And I'm worried that it's not just as simple as us coming up with solutions, that I think it's hard for you to stop.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm worried about that for you, for our relationship, et cetera. So, you need to be clear here that we're talking about addiction, and this isn't just a less than adaptive solution to a problem. This is one that is hard to stop.
Hi, I'm Ari Fong, producer and host for Check Your Head Mental Health for Musicians podcast, where musicians and experts come and share their stories and solutions for mental health and wellness. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you like us, please follow us on social media at Check Your Head Podcast. And visit us at checkyourheadpodcast.com, where you'll find over 100 mental health resources that will assist you in your mental health recovery. Also, if you want to show your love, you can donate or buy the merch. We have superhero tees and hoodies for sale to remind you and your loved ones that you are superheroes every day. You rock, and we love you.